Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Sleep In Sunday. And Sleep In Sunday is also our special guest Sunday, where we highlight a special guest that we think is special and that has an interesting story to share. And we have a special guest today, Komala Kumari, who is, you want to introduce her?
My name's Kaustubha.
You're Kaustubha, right?
Yeah.
You know how long it takes me to get your whole title out of my mouth? Kaustubha, senior educator. I'm like,
well,
by the way, I have to apologize for everybody because I was on my back for like 5 days. I couldn't do anything. And I couldn't write to anybody or communicate with anybody. People were sending me heartfelt prayers, and I didn't know what it was. My wife said, take a COVID test. I didn't have real COVID symptoms, but I took a test. I didn't have flu symptoms, but I took a Lyme test. You know what I think it is?
I know what it is.
Black fly fever.
Black fly fever. Now, I can't hear that without thinking of Ted Nugent, but go ahead. Describe what it is.
Black fly fever. Black fly fever, where you get bit by a black fly. And then I did something where my immune system, I was exhausted, and then it shut me down for 5 days. I couldn't move. I had a mild fever, but I had no energy whatsoever. And so I woke up with a dream about Raghunath Swami, a long 1.5-hour dream.
Yeah.
And he was initiating one of my yoga students.
Okay.
And I felt relieved I woke up in a pool of sweat, and I woke up for the first day, like alive.
You again.
Yeah, I feel great.
Now, here's a question. Do you have any superpowers?
I don't know. Maybe I will. Why? From getting bitten by the black fly?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You know, what was the meaning of all of this?
You know what? I tried to find, I will say this. It is so hard to hear and chant when you were sick. And I realized that I couldn't even, the best I could do was put on a lecture, and then I'd fall asleep and I couldn't do anything. All I had was my mind and whatever was going through my mind at the time. And it's sad to say, I have a bunch of crap in my mind. It's very, very sad to say, because I thought, okay, what if I just die? This is what's going on in my mind right now.
You got a lot of good stuff in there too, though. I know you do.
Yeah, I know, but I needed to be at the forefront of my mind, and I just felt like it wasn't. I felt like I failed the test here, but even the failed test.
It sounds to me like you passed the test because you got the realization to.
Well, I woke up this morning and read the Gopis. I went to bed reading the Gopis' songs of separation. I woke up reading the prayers of Queen Kunti.
See that?
So that was my celebration.
Well, it's good to have you back. You look great. You look like you lost a little weight. You got energy. I think.
You know what's interesting? When I lose weight, my head just shrinks a little.
Your head. You look head shrunken. It's fantastic.
It's really true. Just shrinks, just a little, just noticeably enough. But my wife took such good care of me, and Mara brought over some juices. It was really great.
Oh, Mara, I see. And I miss Mara. I feel like, and all of the Zoomers, you know, I feel like there's been some serious separation.
I checked my phone this morning. So many people sent thank you, and it's the great prayers of the Vaishnavas.
That's what it was.
Healed me.
Okay.
And Komala Kumar is cool. We love her. Her and Rupa, her husband, are like this wonder couple that I love. They played on that CD that I did. They're incredibly talented. They grew up. Here's before you get the official, my unofficial intro to these. These are a couple of people who grew up devotees practicing Krishna with very serious parents practicing spiritual life. You know what happens? These are called, which we don't like very much around here,
Undented cans.
undented cans. And watch what she'll say. No,
We
no,
don't like them. Is that what you
I,
said?
I drank a black coffee once.
No, don't tell my dad he's on.
Can you tell that story before we even start about your
Time.
father's phone call?
I don't know what story. Maybe.
Remember you told me your father called you up and he said, Kumari, I heard that you're drinking coffee now.
It wasn't
Be
a
honest.
phone call. It wasn't a phone call. It was in person. He came to visit me in Chennai when I was preparing for a performance, and we had a meal together. And my sister and I, it was a very serious point in our lives because we had to decide. And I was in my late 20s, my sister in her 30s, but we had to decide whether or not we were going to order a coffee in front of my dad.
Whoa.
And we went back and forth. We had to step away from the table and have a discussion about it. And then we thought, you know what? I'm going to just do this. We're adults. We're going to do it. And
How old were you?
I was 27.
These rebellious kids, I tell you.
Hashtag undented can problems.
I did it though. It's the bravest thing I've done in my life. But I did get a talk. And my father said, "So you're not doing this often, are you?" And I told him it helps me dance.
Anyway,
Okay.
let's hear the official one.
Okay, here's the official bio. Komala Kumari began her Bharatanatyam dance journey at the tender age of 3 years old, under the guidance of her sister Anapayani, who I believe we have here on the show this morning.
Welcome, Anapayani. Also,
I don't believe I've ever met Anapayani, but I just hear all kind of incredible things about her. It seems like she's just like a beacon of light for all kind of people that grew up in Alachua, like this huge bhakti
Did
community.
she go to school in Vrindavan too?
She went to Gurukul in England. And actually, I wasn't going to tell you this until after you already had me on the show. But now that I'm locked in and things can't be changed, I want you to know you have the wrong sister.
Okay.
It should have been Anapayani, but maybe you can get her on later.
Well, you see,
I got
one of the things I was going to mention at the end of the bio is that you're a regular Zoomer.
I am.
If we can get Anapayani to be a regular Zoomer, we'd be honored, and then we'll definitely bring her on too. Although we bring her on anyway. But okay, so since 3 years old, she has received years of rigorous training in Chennai, and I see you pronounce it really correctly, right? Chennai. South India, formerly Madras, right? Mm-hmm. South India under her guru Srimati Indira Kadambi. Kumari taught and performed with the Bhakti-yogi Dance Academy in Florida for 10 years before moving to New York, where she freelances and teaches dance. She's performed extensively on tours across Canada and the US, as well as Mexico, Panama, England, Poland, and India. Kumari is the 2016, now this is a big deal. In case most of you, unless you're into dance, you don't know this, but if you know about dance, this is actually a big deal. Kumari is the 2016 recipient of the Vadavur Ramai Pillai Grand Prize from the Cleveland Tyagaraja Bharatanatyam competition. And it's a fierce competition to win that. Kumari dances because it is not only her passion, but it is an expression of her devotion and profound spiritual offering. And that's a lot what we want to talk about today is, we're reading Bhagavatam every day, on Wisdom of the Sages. And it's wisdom. It's a literary tradition, but it's informing an entire culture with its, with everything from its etiquette and cuisine and but to its arts as well. And those arts play a big role in all the different forms of bhakti and forms of yoga, especially in bhakti yoga. These arts play a really important role. So Kumari, could you just get us started by just sharing with us a bit about the origins of Bharatanatyam dance and what the word Bharatanatyam means?
Sure. I'll start with the meaning of Bharatanatyam. So it's the first word is Bharata, which is one, a nod to Bharata Muni, who was the compiler of the Natya Shastra, but also that word can be broken down, and the three syllables Bharata, each representing a different aspect of the dance. So Bha comes from bhavam, which is the emotion, the essence of the feeling that is invoked in the dancer and that is shared with the audience. The ra coming from ragam, which is the melody. The Bharatanatyam is very closely associated with the type of music that it's performed to. So it's only performed traditionally to Carnatic music, which is the classical music of South India. And then the ta, which is from talam, or rhythm. And so those three aspects come together for the word Bharata, and then the word Natyam means dance or dance drama.
So bhava, which refers to the emotions, raga, the melody, and tala, the rhythm. And you know, this idea about bhava, the emotions, you know, these are, you mentioned Bharata Muni, who was the compiler of the Natya Shastras, which are, it's a collection of Sanskrit texts on the performing arts, is that right? Including dance, but other forms as well?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes into details about all kinds of things in theater, the lighting, the stage setup, the costuming. And then in terms of dance, all of the theory from Bharatanatyam is traced back to the Natya Shastra. So the names of each one of the feet positions, the leg positions, arms, the hands, the eyes, it all traces back to that original source.
So it's a form of dance with, would it be right to say, in one sense, like rigid kind of rules?
Yes.
Would you express it that way? I mean, I don't mean that rigid if I say that it maybe it has a negative connotation.
Sounds fun.
Well, interestingly enough, what my understanding is that the rigidity of it is actually more of a modern expression, because a lot changed in the world of Bharatanatyam during the time of English colonization.
They actually banned it at one point, I believe, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. And before that time, so Bharatanatyam, as we know it, it originated in the temples in South India, and it was performed by Devadasis. These Deva meaning God and Dasi meaning servant. And these women, they dedicated their entire lives to the deity within the temple and to the art that they performed. And they were in essence married to the deity, and their entire life was dedicated to service. And at that time, from my understanding, and also what I can see based on the videos of that style that originated from those particular people, the rigidity was not actually there. It was the bhavam which took precedence over everything. And one could even say, from a perspective of a dancer in today's age, one could look at it and go, oh, these dancers don't have any technique. The technique is not there. The lines are not there. But today, that's what's valued a lot. Back then, it was the bhavam, it was the essence, it was the service and the mood in which the dancer was performing. And
well, one thing, Kumari, it's a great point, but it's not just what I'm finding. It's like not just the mood when you're even witnessing Bharatanatyam. It is that it's not about a performance that you're putting out there to attract people to you.
Right.
Like sometimes when you see people dance, you start to think, whoa. As a man, if I see a woman dancing, you think, wow, she's very beautiful. And almost like the dances bring you in and sort of bring your, my lower passions are rising. It's not there with Bharatanatyam. You don't feel like sexually agitated. You don't feel sort of like, look at this person who's sort of like funneling the world to them and their body and their movements. You look at a person doing Bharatanatyam and you feel, first of all, sometimes they tell the story, or you know the story of what they're doing. and it becomes almost like a meditation. Oh, this is when Shiva is shooting the bow, or this is when I can't remember, but this is when this is happening, or this pastime's happening. You appreciate the art of the dance, but it's not about the dancer. It's about the offering. The same with like a good kirtan.
Mm-hmm.
You're appreciating the great musicianship, but it's not about the guy with his hand going up and down the harmonium or the mridanga player.
Right.
And that's probably what makes yours so special as well. Matter of fact, I don't even get how people do this that don't practice bhakti. Like, you must know Westerners who practice this but don't practice bhakti.
Well, and Indian people as well.
And Indian people as well.
I think that now with the revival over the past 100 years of, less than 100 years of Bharatanatyam, it's been really brought to the forefront as an art, and in many ways it's lost some of that original quality of the bhavam, of the bhakti. And there are many people who are still holding that very strongly, and those people are dancers who I admire very much and I look up towards. And then there are a lot of people who see it as, no, this is a classical art and it just has to be done externally beautifully, and whether or not you believe in any of the stories or you think that any of them are significant doesn't matter.
You know what? It's such the difference between bhakti and just like culture. Hey, it's culture. It's just like, if there's a painting of Krishna in my house, I want it to be painted by a person who practices bhakti. Mm-hmm. A person practicing bhakti wants to see the art of a person painting with love. Mm-hmm. If there's a great kirtan, but I hear that these people don't actually love God, they just do it because they love music, it's a different kirtan. And I think this is like the difference between people practicing a bhakti path and not. Hey, Kaustubha, do you mind if I take it back to something she said? Because Kumari ji and you, because you're both on a very evolved path, you spoke, and it was so fast the way she was introducing the Devi Dasis that some people could have went, what? They're married to the deity? We went by it like it's no big deal, and everyone's like, yeah, married to the deity. Like, we got to understand these, when you said these original dancers for the deity, their whole life was dedicated to the deity. Now, if you're in the crazy club like we are, we're sort of in a crazy club. We're in a new type of normal, right? The new type of normal is our focus is on God, that God can manifest in a deity, and there's actually connection we have in the deity. So we have probably a split, maybe. I don't know what the percentage is in our Wisdom of the Sages listeners, who some people are like, I totally get that. The deity is a manifestation of God, etc. And some people are like, I like a positive, upbeat class, spiritual class in the morning. So I think we have to break it down to our people. There's a concept of a deity, and these people are focused on that deity, and they would actually do a dance for this deity. And the dance wouldn't go outside that, what's that called? That room, the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Sanctum Sanctorium.
Yeah, what is that? They always bring a Latin name into like the Hindu temples. We tried to.
It's the sacred place within the sacred place.
Oh, that's what it means.
Sanctum Sanctorium.
Sacred place within the so every temple's got one of these. The sacred place within a sacred place. So they would just dress up and dance for the deity.
Yeah, originally it didn't leave that. It didn't leave that sacred place. And
was it public at all? Would the public also witness the dance, or was it almost entirely for the deity in the temple?
I believe so. I think that the public at a certain point was involved, and actually what happened, which is kind of a almost embarrassed or a shameful part of this dance's history, which is what ultimately led to the banning of Bharatanatyam, is that when the English came, they stopped funding. They stopped because the Maharajas were funding these dancers, and they were taking
the local Indian kings.
Yes, they were
regional kings.
And that once that stopped because of English colonization, the dancers were left with nothing. And so what started as something very sacred in the temples ultimately went to the courts and to other places in order to sustain themselves, and it led to more sensual, erotic type of dancing and sometimes prostitution. And then when independence happened, there was a desire to completely remove ourselves, India's selves, from that shameful thing,
So
which had been tainted.
Right.
So it got completely banned. And then when it came back, it was reintroduced with a new name. It was actually called Sadir before it was called Bharatanatyam.
Oh, really?
And so it
Sadir?
came back with a new name. Yeah.
Now, this is just for Bharatanatyam, or this is all the 7 classical dances of India?
This is specifically about Bharatanatyam, but I don't know exactly what the histories are with the other dances, because I know that other dances such as Odissi also had Devadasis, but I don't know how the transition happened with Odissi.
Okay. Well, let's I'm interested to hear about. Let's go back in your own history a bit, and hear about we mentioned in the bio of your sister was your original teacher, and then you also had a guru in Chennai that you learned under. Could you share with us just a bit about how you were introduced, and especially the relationship of the student to the teacher, and how that played a role in your learning this art?
Sure. So my history with the dance, it goes back to before I was born, actually. It goes back to my parents.
That's the kind of answer I want. It goes back to a previous life.
Sometimes people
Who were you in that life?
Sometimes people ask me, why did you choose Bharatanatyam? It's so rigid. It's not as graceful as the other forms. And I always have to say, I didn't choose Bharatanatyam. Bharatanatyam chose me. It just happened that way. So it goes back to my parents, and both of my parents were very attracted to classical Indian arts. Actually, my father lived in Bombay during the time of Srila Prabhupada. He lived in the Juhu temple, and he was the director for Bhakti Kalakshetra, which was the performing arts group and theater in Bombay. And my mother was studying Carnatic music long before I was born. Actually, she was introduced to Indian classical music because a singer came to the Los Angeles temple. My mother joined the Bhakti movement when she was 16 in Laguna. And a singer came to the temple. She moved into the temple by the time she was 17, I think.
And then the lawsuits began.
So she was introduced by a singer who came and performed Meera bhajans at the temple, and my mother fell in love with it immediately and knew that she wanted to learn this classical art form. So she got in touch with a teacher. It was the daughter-in-law of the woman who came and sang, and she went in for her first lesson, and the woman asked her, okay, do you want to learn North Indian classical or South Indian classical music? And my mother had no idea. She didn't know the difference between either one. And she said, I don't know. What's the difference? And the woman said, well, South Indian classical music is the music for Bharatanatyam. And my mother had seen Bharatanatyam because there had been people who had performed in the temple in Los Angeles. So she said, oh, yes, South Indian, please. So from that time, and that was long before I was born, she started learning Carnatic music. And when her and my father met, that was actually the first thing that they bonded over. My mother told me that they used to listen to cassette tapes together of Carnatic music. And at that time, this was in the 70s, Carnatic music was not popular in the States at all. And Indian classical music was not popular. So,
is it popular now?
I think it's much more popular now. Much more people know about it.
They're breaking out the secret MS Subbalakshmi tapes and
Yes.
the Bombay Sisters.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, my parents' first date, they went to a Dr. L. Subramaniam concert in Los Angeles. So that set a foundation for me to be born into. And it was my sister, like mentioned before, it was my sister who really became interested in it. And she went to Gurukula, or a boarding school of Vedic Bhakti philosophy, and in England. And there was someone who came to the school and started teaching both ballet and Bharatanatyam on different days. And so my sister, from the age of 5, started learning. And when she left that school at the age of 14, she wanted to pursue this dance more fully. So my family being in complete support, and I was 2 when she was 14. Mm-hmm. And my family being in complete support of that and wanting to encourage her, my parents decided that we would all move to India so that she could learn.
It really shows how much your parents valued it.
I know.
Like, let's move the whole family to South India so that our daughter can learn this really important art form.
Yes. And actually, we didn't end up staying. The plan was to move there permanently. And I think that after 6 months, my parents realized that
India's tough.
Financially, it's going to be hard to maintain the family. And so we decided that we would go back and forth, is ultimately what we ended up doing. But at that time, so it was 1992, we were all in India, and we went to Bangalore. And my sister started meeting different teachers, going to different teachers.
As a 14 or 15-year-old?
14-year-old, yeah.
Okay.
And the way that I remember the story is that she would go to a teacher's school, and she would say, I want to learn from you. And they would say, okay, it will be this much money in order to learn this many items. It was transactional. And when she went to the school of my teacher, it's her teacher as now my teacher as well, my teacher said to her, okay, first let me see you dance. And then she said, okay, I'd like to teach you. When can you start? And it was more of just a desire to share this art, and it wasn't transactional. And so my relationship with my guru, Srimati Indira Kadambi, it started then in 1992, and I've been her student ever since. And actually, my teacher now has dozens of students all over the world. She has an online school. It's called E-Ambalam. She teaches hundreds of students all over and travels and does workshops. But she only has 2 students who have completed their Bharatanatyam Arangetram, which is a completion of the graduation, the debut performance. She only has 2 students who have completed that under her, and that's me and my sister.
Wow.
I'm closely tied to her for our whole lives.
It seems like these are things like you have to immerse yourself in. And Kaustubha, isn't it sad how, like in the West, we want everything so cheap. Yeah. We want to become masters of things, like with a weekend course. We want to become a master of Ayurveda or a master of this. It takes a life of immersion. And it's amazing how you got to just and that's an immersion. Your family picks you up and brings you there. But because of that, then you could really give it. And it's also about the quality of devoting your heart to it and understanding it and living it and having the affection. I'm back at that point of people just studying it. Well, it's a classical art. Let's study classical arts. Big deal. It's a classical art. That is like studying the honey jar. Look at this incredible jar. Big deal. It's a jar. You got to open the jar and you got to eat the honey. Otherwise, it's like, okay, we're studying this interesting person. And there's people that study the Mahabharata and can quote the Mahabharata and name things from the Mahabharata in the same way you study Greek mythology, and they know this and they know that. But it's different when you find someone who lives the Mahabharata and lives the Bhagavad Gita. it's their passion. It's not just becoming scholarly and you're cultured and you're well-rounded. And this is the beauty of people like yourself, and truthfully all the people practicing bhakti yoga, is you're taking what you do and it is funneling you towards the highest of all culture, which is spiritual culture and spiritual life. Thank you for being so sincere about this. And truthfully, just hearing your undented story is making me want to take my life and get a do-over right now.
I think when that fly bit you, that was a redo-over.
maybe it's time for a do-over right now. I'm going to just do it over right now.
Okay.
I want to, what it's called, Apple Z, when you can undo, Command Z.
Command Z.
I want a Command Z in my life.
Well, you know, just getting back to your relationship with your teacher, you know, when I think of my own relationship with my teacher, you know, before I came to Bhakti, you know, I don't have a relationship with anyone that was my teacher before then. Like, most of their names I don't remember. And most of the relationships, particularly when I got a little bit older, you know, were full of tension. Largely due to myself, but and my own behavior. But there was, you know, when I think of you learning under, a trained Bharatanatyam guru in South India, I picture, you know, coming together early in the morning and, you know, chanting the Shanti mantras and, you know, like this kind of establishing this kind of sacred relationship where something sacred is being shared from one to another and carefully handed down. And was it like that for you?
And was she strict? I've heard they're really strict and sometimes a little harsh.
Yes, it was like that. And
which one, the strict and harsh, or like the beautiful,
romantic and beautiful?
Both. I mean, so my teachers nowadays, her school is in her home, and it does feel very much like a gurukula. And she actually shifted back to Bangalore recently, but when she was in Chennai, it was also, the school was attached to her home, and it was my dance efforts and my dance learning has been always very much tied to my relationship with her, with my teacher, with my guru. So in that way, the sacred, that sacred connection, it was very there. I didn't necessarily go there very early in the morning. It was more like 9 a.m.
Okay.
But it's true. You always.
All right. It's losing it for me already, but okay. Go on.
But there's always, it's a very intentional art form. So you always begin with prayers. You always start dancing with a prayer to Bhumi Devi, to Mother Earth, and thanking her for allowing you to dance, to stomp on her sacred surface, and also asking for forgiveness. And there's always prayers of intention. We always chant a prayer to Ganesha, to Saraswati, to Shiva, to Hanuman, and then we begin. So that's always there, and that intention is always there. And then in terms of my relationship with my teacher, I would go to, if I was studying in Chennai, I would start class at 9, and I would usually be in class until around 1, because even if I'm not dancing the whole time, I might be watching other students or might be working on something. And then I would stay at her house for lunch, and then I would stay for afternoon class. So it's an all day thing. And I even at some times when I was having a hard time with my training and feeling guilty for any times I wasn't practicing, if I was outside, let's say I was just walking to go get a smoothie or something, if I ever saw a car that looked like my teacher's car, I would get nervous because I knew that she would stop and ask me why I wasn't practicing. So my dance experience was always tied to my relationship with my teacher.
Yeah.
And was she strict? She's gotten a lot softer over the years. But when I was younger, yes, we have a stick. It's called
I knew a stick was going to come in. I knew. I was going to say it, but I was like, no, I'm not going to bring up a stick.
There's a stick involved. And I think I had it pretty easy compared to a lot of other dancers. My teacher likes to remind me that actually she was not as strict as others.
Soft on you.
But there's a stick. It's called a tattakari, and it's to keep the rhythm in the class. And I've had
borrowed it from my Italian father.
Yeah. I've had the stick thrown at me on a number of occasions, and I was pretty good at jumping out of the way. But the funny thing is, after you get it thrown at you, then you have to go get it and bring it back to the teacher. And sometimes it slides under a dresser or something, and not only have you just been attacked by the stick, but now you have to retrieve it and bring it back to the teacher. And I've had my hand, because the mudras are very particular, and it's very important that you keep the hand gestures in the proper way. And I had a habit of not tucking my thumb properly, so I had the stick attack my thumb a couple times. But
the difference of the stick in this occasion is nothing's done with rage and hate. You realize these are the people that love you the most. Even my father. I got hit by a stick. I got spanked. It was done with love. I never felt like my father was taking out his frustration for the world on my butt. You know, I felt like this person trying to contain me and hold me. And I think it's the same thing. I think there was corporal punishment in a lot of cultures. It's when it's done with rage and aggression, like sometimes it has been. That's when we get disgusted. And then we go, okay, you can't have any of that. But the stick is there. Mother Yashoda chase little Krishna with a stick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on.
Not right. Glorifying hitting people with sticks. I wanted to talk about the character of the teacher, though. The character of the teacher I find very high in these arts. Can you say that for your teacher?
Yeah, definitely. She is fully devoted to her art, and I was thinking about it today, about my relationship with her and how and what her spiritual and her bhakti connection is. And what I came to was that her spiritual connection is 100% through her art, whereas for myself, art and dance is an aspect of the way I connect to
it's an aspect
divinity. It's an aspect, and for her it's the path, and it is the goal. Yes. So I've learned so much through that, and in terms of the bhakti relationship, what I keep coming back to is that my success, or my success in dance, it depends on the relationship that I have with my teacher. And it's actually, now I'm thinking about it more and more, and I'm thinking, I really need to reach out to her. Like, it's reminding me that in order for me to go deeper in my dance, I have to continue making that connection with her. That tie is there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share, it's another thing I feel like we're missing in a Western culture of teachers, especially of teachers of yoga, is these very, if you've had teachers in India, which we've had, they come from such a high caliber of character, because as a student, you're vulnerable and you're open, and you're taking in not just what they're teaching, but you're taking in their lifestyle into your very being. And it's sort of creating you. You're looking for cues in how to act and how to behave, and what is right and what is wrong, and what is lifestyle like, and what is life like, and what is good and bad. And I think it's so important that these teachers have these impeccable character, because there's something that I remember when I was in 6th grade, and there was do you remember elementary school when there's like the teacher's lounge or something? And I opened the door by mistake to the teacher's lounge, and I saw my science teacher smoking a cigarette. And I was like, oh my God, someone I look up to and respect is smoking. You want those people who represent basically God, or represent authority, or represent a dropped pin in behavior. You want them to have some stellar character. And I tell you, it's one thing to really, if you are a teacher, the microscope's on us to really live by example with that, and be careful who you let into your life as teachers, because we're not just taking in that art, we're taking in so much more of their lifestyle. Kaustubha, you were about to say something, then I got I'm making up for 5 days of silence.
Okay.
I'm cutting off everybody today.
I was just thinking that I was also kind of going that way, where like within the Western yoga world and the idea of what a guru is, it's really not well understood. But I think what's being illustrated through what Kumari is sharing is someone who took this art very seriously, was and saw it as very sacred, was trying to hand it down to another person and instill in them not only the skills, but also the same reverence for how sacred the art is. And that the student, through the relationship with that person in the sacred context in which they've connected, it's something that you carry your whole life. So I would imagine that, like, before you dance, you think of your teacher, and think of representing her well and representing what she shared with you well, and in this way, something sacred is handed down generation to generation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And probably to teach you, it probably feels for her, it probably feels the best. Out of all the people that are transactional and want to learn the culture, she probably feels like, yes, finally, these two ladies have understood it.
She does have a lot of affection for my family, and now she's also gotten to teach my younger sister too. So it's much of a family affair. With
people like Kumari, they need to be financially supported so they can just teach.
Actually, all the things that you just said about teachers made me go, okay, maybe I shouldn't be a teacher.
You just gotta stop drinking that Starbucks.
Impeccable character.
Kumari lights up a cigarette. So let's talk about the connection between what Wisdom of the Sages is doing every day, reading Bhagavatam, mm-hmm. and the dance. Because one thing that I find fascinating about Bharatanatyam and other forms of Indian dance is I think, not entirely, but largely, when we think of dance, we think of rhythm. Mm-hmm. We think of moving your body to a beat, mm-hmm. But there's so much more, because it's not just like, it's dance, but it's storytelling at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so therefore it involves mudras, it involves facial expressions, and all the postures all have a meaning. But what's being expressed is, like where we began, bhava, mm-hmm. the feelings of devotion. And this dance form is largely informed by Bhagavatam and Ramayana and Mahabharata, the great classics from India. So could you just share that something about that connection and how you understand it?
Yeah. So Bharatanatyam has two main components. One is called Nritya, which is they call it the pure dance, which is purely the physical aspect that is tied to rhythm and to aesthetic movements, the poses which you see on the outside of the temples, the sculpture. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other aspect, which is called Abhinaya. And Abhinaya is the emotive or the storytelling aspect, in which the dancer utilizes hand gestures, eye movements, facial expressions to tell a story. And the word Abhinaya means to lead one to something. So essentially, what is required for a dancer to fully immerse herself or himself in Abhinaya is to personally be immersed themselves. And this is something that I am learning more and more now that I have. So even though you both have been so kindly saying that I'm I've been born and brought up in bhakti, and I'm an undented can. I really don't feel like I personally started taking the path of bhakti seriously, honestly, until a year and a half ago. I really don't. I feel as though I'm such a beginner in all of this, and in terms of really internalizing and going further than just the superficials, and understanding why certain things are done, and knowing that it's not about just the externals. And so doing that in my bhakti practice, in my spiritual practice, has made me understand more of what it means to actually be a dancer, to be fully present and situated in that art which can lead someone to something. So through
and when you say lead someone to something, lead someone to feel the devotional emotions which the bhakti path is meant to bring one to, is that what you mean?
exactly, it's to lead someone to bhavam,
Yeah.
essentially. and and that can be done when the dancer is immersed in bhavam. And although I might have had maybe glimpses of that in the past, because something kind of happens sometimes when you go on stage, and you forget what is going on externally, and you just become immersed in the moment, and then afterwards you kind of don't even really know what happened. And now I understand that it is a role that I'm taking on in order to bring the audience towards something. And that's what art does. It brings us past the physical realm of reality, and it brings us to something, a place of feeling, a place of emotion and connection. So that's what Abhinaya is. And now sometimes life is like this, where you start to understand the importance of something, or the depth of something, and then I look back and I realize, oh yeah, everything in my life has led up to that, and I didn't realize it at the time. But actually,
synchronicity.
exactly. And my guru, Srimati Indira Kadambi, she's the most well known for her Abhinaya. That is what she is. That's what she excels in. That's what she embodies. Because she's a student of Srimati Kalanidhi Narayanan, she is the most world famous dancer for her bhavam. Her Abhinaya is unmatched. She's called the doyen of Abhinaya. And so now I'm recognizing that, yes, although the rhythm, the movement, all of that is a big part of it, but it's the emotion, it's the expression of prayer through dance, of the expression of prayer through movement. And that is what the essence of Bharatanatyam to me, now that I'm finally starting to go deeper within it.
Well, I find all that super fascinating, because again, the whole path of bhakti is meant to bring you, the goal is to experience certain feelings of divine love for God. And the theory behind the Natya Shastras, and you're using this word Abhinaya?
Abhinaya, yeah.
And I know there was one great sage named, I believe it was Abhinavagupta, who wrote on Sanskrit drama. And they're the same theory, the same rasa theory, or same kind of idea about bhavam, is that the playwright has to experience a certain emotion, and the idea is to convey that emotion through the script, and then the actor has to try to embody that emotion themselves. And the goal is achieved when the audience feels the same emotion through witnessing it. Then you've actually achieved something beautiful through art. And again, like we've discussed this on the show sometimes, you go to a movie nowadays, it may be brilliant, like the script, the direction, the acting, the costumes, the set, the whole thing may be like incredibly, the talent that goes into it can be incredible, but the bhava that you walk away with could be anything. It could be disturbing. It can be, it's like, it can so likely like drag your consciousness down. Whereas these Vedic arts are always to kind of uplift you, bring you closer to truth and closer to divine love and all that. But what I'm really interested in hearing from you about is that because these arts were centered around these ancient sacred texts and the stories that they tell. So you must have played roles as a dancer, playing the role of Sita or playing the role of Radha or Gopi.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were describing, you know, I'm not so educated on this, but I know there are these schools of acting where you immerse yourself in that character, even like all day for months. You try to embody the character that you're meant to play. What do they call that? I'm forgetting the name for that.
Method acting?
Yeah, method acting. Thank you.
Method acting.
And there was some famous, I think, Russian teacher who kind of like started a whole school of what that was all about.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that the act of method acting within the context of the Bhagavatam or the context of the Ramayana, where the dancer or the actor has to try to understand the emotion of Sita, and then meditate on that very deeply, contemplate that for all of the hours that she puts into preparing for that performance. That meditation is it's no longer just a discipline to try to create a performance, but it's actually very deep, powerful spiritual meditation, even if there was never a performance. And so what is that like to try to embody one of these sacred characters, and how has that informed your own devotional practice?
Or do you do that?
Yeah. So my teacher set a foundation for this practice in the way that she teaches Abhinaya. And she always encourages the students, not encourages, but actually makes us, trains us to, while we're depicting the lyrics of the song, we should also have an inner dialogue that is giving the meaning of the movement or the meaning of the song, but is paired with the emotion of the character. And so when you first start learning, you're learning pieces that are more simple in emotion. And the first Abhinaya piece I learned, I think, was a poem talking to Kartikeya and saying, you must be crazy if you think that me and you are still a couple. It's a woman speaking to him saying that you've hurt me.
To a god.
Yes, to a god. So it's these very exalted poetry, but it's really brought to the earth emotion, human emotion level. So the way that she teaches it is that we will learn the meaning of the song, we'll learn the words one word at a time, and then we have this inner dialogue, and we should be repeating this inner dialogue, and she encourages us to come up with our own and really try and understand the character, come up with our own dialogue, and that to the point where that inner dialogue can almost be mistaken for your own thoughts. Because it's been repeated so many times in your head, and through the practice we keep repeating this inner dialogue. And then in terms of embodying some of these characters which are more difficult to embody, I had an experience recently where I was preparing for a performance, and the piece I was doing was a Narasimha Kaustubham. So it's a dance on Narasimha, who, as we know, he's half man, half lion. Neither of those things do I relate to. He is also the most ferocious, objectively terrifying entity. He's huge. His teeth are like thunderbolts, and his nails are like talons, and so I, in my small 5'4" frame, am supposed to try and bring about this emotion of Narasimha. And I was finding it very difficult, and I spent a few days, and this was for an online performance that I did recently, so this was not too long ago. I spent a few days trying to meditate on Nrsimha, and chanting Nrsimha Kavacha, looking at pictures of him, trying to get a little bit of something, because I didn't feel like I had any of that connection. And then I had this experience where I was talking to a friend, and she was going through a difficult time, and she was telling me that she was chanting Nrsimha Kavacha every day. And this is a friend who I know personally is so deeply connected, and her bhakti is so strong, and her love is so strong, that I thought about how would that Nrsimha react to a situation in which his loving devotee is being wronged. And it's harder for me to understand it in the context of Prahlad, because I haven't gotten to know Prahlad personally yet. But this friend I have, and all of a sudden it made sense to me. And I thought, if he were to find out that this bhakta was wronged, how would he react? And then in that way, every time I would practice that piece, I would think about that, and just fury and rage kind of just came out of me, out of I don't know where. So it does involve a lot of prayer, and it involves taking the ego out of it. And I think that was a part of it that I had a hard time with for a long time, because there's self-consciousness. There's that feeling of, oh, am I doing this right? Am I looking okay? Am I going to look crazy? And what I keep coming back to is I have to take myself out of it, and to whatever degree that I can, and I have to pray to be in that moment to channel that.
That's to me, that's just really incredible and really beautiful. I remember once I was speaking to an Odissi dancer, and on the same subject, and she said to me, I've played Krishna many times, and that's easy. She said, it's not so hard. He's mischievous, he's stealing butter, he's doing this, he's doing that. But she said, then one time she had to play Radha.
Yeah. And
she said, I didn't even know where to begin. Like the feelings of separation that she's feeling for Krishna, the depth of her devotion. She said, she said she had to pray and pray and pray and pray. And then finally, she just got some little clue about how to do it. But, that act of going through that, I see as very parallel to something like a Christian monk who goes into seclusion to try to understand the compassion of Christ or something like that, I need to think about this and meditate, and it's not coming easy, but it's something so sacred that I'm willing to dedicate myself to try to really understand this. So it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful art on so many levels, that someone would have composed an ancient song with their devotion, and then a dancer, slash actress, you could say, is going to contemplate deeply, spend the time with it, and really with not just as an actor, dancer, but as a devotee, to really try to understand, carrying the same appreciation for how sacred it is, and then an audience member watching that character who, I can't see Sita, but on the stage I can see someone manifest Sita's presence, on that stage, and feel something that I've never felt before. And in this way, we're all serving one another, and we're all kind of uplifting absorbing our minds where they should be absorbed. And so, just to wrap it up, because we're focused on Bhagavatam, would you like to share with us just any favorite passage or verse from Bhagavatam?
Sure. So, because I knew you were going to ask this question, I was actually thinking about it for the past couple days. Okay. And I was thinking, okay, what's my favorite story? What's my favorite pastime? What do I feel connected to? And then I thought, you know what? I need to come clean about something.
Uh-oh.
And that is that.
It's not the coffee.
Let the dent.
That is that I only started reading Bhagavatam systematically for the first time this year, this January. So I'm in the first canto, and this is my first time actually on my own reading Bhagavatam.
You grew up around it.
You grew up
I grew up
hearing
around
all
it.
these
So
stories.
and this is where I want to segue into what my favorite aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam is that because I grew up around it, I grew up so I went to a Gurukula from the age of 12 to 16, a boarding school in Alachua, Florida. So every single day we went to the temple in the morning and we heard class on Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, how much I was paying attention, I don't know. But I think that because of that, something more subtle than I had realized had kind of given me this relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam. Mm-hmm. And so what I experienced recently, and this is something I've been hearing my whole life, but I didn't experience until recently, is that Srimad Bhagavatam is not just a book, and that it's possible to have a relationship, and that the Bhagavatam reaches out to you and can communicate with you, and you can have a relationship with this text because it's intelligent. It's described as being Krishna himself. So I had this experience recently where I was kind of going through an emotional thing, going through a little bit of a hard time, and I was chanting, and as I was chanting, I had this thought that kind of just came up, and I thought, Krishna, I thought I told you that I didn't want to suffer. Like, I want to do this whole getting to know you thing without suffering, and I thought I explained that to you pretty clearly.
Oh, we had a deal.
I thought we had a deal. We had an agreement. And here I am, and I'm going through a hard time. So what's the deal with that? And then of course I kind of just laughed at myself and thought, I know better than that. But that nonetheless, that came up. And then later that day, I had this verse stuck in my head, and I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know if it was Bhagavatam verse. I didn't know if it was a Bhagavad Gita verse. I don't remember ever learning it, but it was stuck in my head. Only the first line, because I only knew the first line. It was like a song on repeat. It kept on replaying in my mind. And then I thought, oh man, I better look up this verse, because I think that Srimad Bhagavatam's trying to tell me something. Or actually, at that time, I didn't know it was the Bhagavatam. It could have been from anywhere. So I looked it up. And of course, it's the verse Tattenu Kampam Susumikshamano, 10th canto. And it's talking about how once someone has, with devotion, offered obeisances to Krishna and is patiently waiting out the reactions of past sinful misdeeds or past actions which are causing current suffering, and is patiently waiting for Krishna's causeless mercy, it gave me the understanding that, and the purport also says that whatever we are experiencing as practitioners of bhakti, or as someone who has kind of opened the door to that relationship, and all it takes is opening the door, really, is just opening the door to the relationship with Krishna, then Krishna personally takes interest in that person's life. And so that, to me, is the significance of Srimad Bhagavatam, just the fact that I can have a personal relationship in ways that I didn't even consciously know. And so yesterday I called my father, and I was actually talking to him about this and telling him the story. And he said to me, you know what? I was chanting that verse just this morning. So things like that, that's, to me, is the significance. It gives me a glimpse.
It's not just a book, it's alive.
Yeah.
That verse 10:14:8. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon them, all the while patiently suffering the reactions to their past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances within their heart, words, and with their heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become their rightful claim.
Beautiful.
I think the only reason why I knew it is because I've heard it quoted so many times, and I just, Srila Prabhupada quotes it, I think, pretty often. When I looked it up, I saw a lot of his quotes, and somehow it entered my subconscious mind, and so that to me that's magic. I think
Beautiful.
That's remarkable.
Thank you.
Hey, Kumari, for the rest of us who are like hearing about Bharatanatyam, or is it too late for us? I mean, if people are like, I want to learn Bharatanatyam, or I want to learn something about Bharat, is it something you can dip your toe into, and try it out? Is it, or is it something that you have to move to India, live there for 10 years? Can you
start when you're 2 years old?
Start when you're 45. Can we do this? Or
It depends what your intention, what your motive is behind learning. If your motive is to become one of the top dancers in the country and perform all over the world and win competitions, then it's probably too late.
Okay.
Sorry, Raghu.
But if your intention is to learn about what it is like to express prayer, to express devotion through the medium of movement and through the body, then it's definitely never too late. And I encourage everyone from every age, and it's also not just for women. That's a misconception. It's very popular, practiced and performed by men, more in India than here, but anybody can learn and at any age.
Okay, because Mara was thinking about that Zumba class.
Yeah.
But now we should just do, Mara, forget the Zumba. She's good.
Well, we're fortunate because we're going to bring Kumari for our Patreon members on Friday. She'll be giving, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. She'll be giving a class entitled Expressing Prayer with the Body, an Introduction to Bharatanatyam Dance.
That is an incredible title, and it's very inviting. Mara, that's it. That's the class for you.
So yeah, so we'll be putting that up probably today on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And as you're saying, men are welcome. If old people are welcome.
Absolutely.
Okay, because it's not that we have to become some
old people
dancer, but we can learn something about devotion through it. And so we're looking forward to, and we thank you for joining us on Friday for that.
Thank you.
And how does one find us on Patreon, Raghunath?
Well,
do you remember after 5 days of lying down with black fly fever?
Everything. Patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. We've created really created a whole online resource. People are like quitting their yoga memberships, stopping yoga teacher trainings, and just joining our Patreon community because it's got so much valuable information. People are joining sometimes with $108 right off the bat because they're saying, I don't have to do anything else. I'm getting yoga classes. I'm getting workshops. I'm getting a intro to Bharatanatyam. Madhu came and did kirtan last week. Ayurveda workshops. Join us there, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And you get Komala Kumari. And we are very honored that you are here. Your life is inspirational. We love your husband. Rupa as well. We miss you guys. And
you guys live probably in the same neighborhood as me, but we're so separated with this whole thing.
Well, they're thinking about moving upstate, so
yeah, I heard that.
We need their musical talent up here for kirtan. That would be incredible. So this is how we end the show. Well, Komala knows this. What did I call you, Komala or Kumari? I've always just called you Kumari.
Call me Kumari. It's my two aspects of my ego, Komala and Kumari.
Didn't I first meet you at Pure when I taught at Pure?
I used to work at Pure. Yeah, I think that is what.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember me from Pure?
Yeah, I do. What was your workshop called? Flight school. Flight school. Yeah. I remember that, and I never could take it because I'm not strong.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kumar.
Kaustubha, Mara, it's good to be back. Everybody, thanks for all your prayers for me to heal. I feel like your collective prayers are very powerful.
I think you're going to have superpowers now, Raghunath, with this black fly.
Because of that black fly?
I don't know how it'll manifest, but...
You're going to become Flyman.
Flyman, yes.
That Mystic City I always wanted.